Hi, Nicia. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.
We invited you to come offer words at Oakland City Church during Black History Month. And as a spoken word artist, I just have a couple of questions about how you became this artist. Who inspired you? How did you become a poet, a spoken word artist?
Oh, so um, I will not be too lengthy with it.
Okay.
So the origins of my poetry, it goes back into my childhood. Um, so I just know as a toddler, going way, way, way back,
Yeah.
I've always had a love for writing. Literature. It was just everything for me. So I know if my mom was here, she could she'll let you know. I was that child that was going around with stationery, just like writing scribbles everywhere. I love you, love yourself. I love God. You're so beautiful. And it just turned into just poetry. It was like little cards everywhere that eventually went from one lines to like complete paragraphs to like almost whole stories all the time. And this was just something I enjoyed doing. So I used to carry books and used to carry journals and whatnot. And then unfortunate situations changed the intention behind the writing. It went from just writing for pure joy to writing for my life, basically. At 10 years old, things went really dark in my life. And so I am a survivor. Long story short, I am a survivor of child molestation. But it was very, very very dark. So in adulthood, I found out what I experienced was domestic servitude. I was a child sex slave. We had a very, very abusive father figure in the home who was just a tyrant over everyone. So on the outside, we had this really beautiful house in Richmond. It was an actual white house with a picket fence, had a bay window. It had a peach tree in the front yard. I mean, it was the image of the American dream on the outside, but on the inside, it was just a complete nightmare. And this was something that was new to me and my siblings and my mom. We had a pretty decent life. It was pretty peaceful, you know, a mother who was beautiful and working. And even though she divorced my dad, it was just, we had a real pleasant home until we moved into this American dream home. And so I lost my voice as a result of it. It's a form of anxiety called selective mutism. I was able to barely speak to my peers, and as far as like speaking to my elders, it just wasn't happening. So I used to just nod my head a lot and just smile a lot because at the time the abuse was so severe and the threats were so common, so frequent. And I believed as a child that, you know, the predator would keep good on his word. And so I just started to rely on my writings to help me, and I would write prayers and then I would pass them to my mom. And I would just like keep these books that just had all of my prayers in them. And before long, I realized that I was writing poetry, but it was just songs, you know, and sometimes I would sing them to myself and sometimes I would get caught singing them. And, you know, depending on who the audience was, if it was one of my aunts, you know, she would just, or they would just praise the sound, just how I would put the melodies together. And I was doing this without knowledge that other people were present many of the times. And then there were times when, of course, the predator would hear and then he would stop saying that, you know, because they were prayers. I was praying, God, please protect me and my family and take us out of this situation. So, yeah, I lost my voice and I continued to journal and continue to write. And then before long, I was asked at school, because now I'm moving through this story pretty quickly because it's a very long story.
Yeah.
I was asked one day at school if I would participate in this young people's counseling session. So the school thought that I was just like this honor roll kid who was just quiet because I was very focused on my academics. But the truth was I couldn't speak. I had this situation going on, and my studies took me away from everything else. So I was able to really focus on the subjects, especially English, because that was just my passion anyway. Just writing was my passion. And so at this session or at this gathering with these young folks, with my peers and my teachers and counselors and principals, I decided to share one of my writings, very personal poetry from my journal. And the response was just overwhelming. I didn't just read it because I wanted to give something to, my peers, or I wanted an audience. I read it because I needed to speak out. Like, I read it for my soul. Like, it was time for me to speak out and say something. I was crying out for help by reading this. And it turns out that a lot more folks present, they needed that release as well, because not only were peers going through it, but my teachers, and I will never forget, a counselor pulled me to the side. And I always share this when I give my testimony. A counselor actually pulled me to the side. She's a beautiful woman, married, family, had been into her career for decades. And she was like a figure on the campus that I was attending. And she said, thank you, because she too had been living with the legacy of child molestation. And she asked me what inspired me to write that. She's like, your imagination. And she's like, you should go into writing. And I said, well, honestly, this is my story. This is my truth. And so my mom had told me about Maya Angelou a long time ago. This is before all the trauma started. But I didn't know the depths of her story. So this person, she was just like, you need to immediately follow Maya Angelou, learn her story. And so I started reading more about Miss Angelou, and I said, oh my God, she lost her voice because she felt like it had too much power after the tragedy. With me, I lost my voice because I felt like I was powerless. So while we were on this journey, this very similar journey, I was just empowered by her, because I was like, man, voice is power. So not only is there power in the writing, just getting it out, finding some positive way to release, but voice is power, sound is power, saying no is power. Our testimonies, it's helping someone in their journey. And so I would say my answer to that question is, Maya Angelou is my everything. I love her. She's like phenomenal woman. That's Maya Angelou. But yeah, that's the origins of my writing. It was something I just loved as a child, and then it just kind of became something that I would do for my soul to survive.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you had that. And it sounds like in you giving voice to your pain, that allowed the listeners some measure of reconciling their own pain. And would you say it touched and healed people who heard your words?
Absolutely. And this is still something that I'm humbly accepting. I know the power right now. I know that it's an anointing. So I call my poetry a ministry. I don't even really call it spoken word. I just call it ministry because of just the effect that it has on community. And even with myself, again, it's a healing tool for myself. So I'm so grateful to God. I didn't turn to vices. I turned to writing. So writing saved my life. It's amazing when I speak to audiences and, afterwards people come up to me and they want to hug and they cry, and we cry together and we pray. And, we're just very grateful that we have each other in community. Sometimes you feel like you're absolutely alone until you see the stranger and they're sharing this story. No matter how similar or how different it may be, to be in one space and be vulnerable together, and the intention is of healing, that's a remarkable feeling. So yeah, words, poetry, power.
Thank you for that amazing story. When did you realize that being a poet or offering spoken word is actually something you could do for a career?
When did this start? When did this kick in? Pretty recently. I want to say, well, maybe not recently, but about 2014. 2014. Prior to 2014, I started hosting these events called Poetry and Cupcake. just in my living room, and it started out as because again, now I know the power of speaking your pain, bringing it to surface, so you won't just continue to suppress it and try to coexist with it. You have to get it out, and understanding a lot of people choose various vices because that's how they quiet their pain. But I just didn't want to do that. My spirit didn't sit right with any self-harm. It's like, you were young and that you didn't deserve that. And I'm not going to allow you to pour salt into your own wound. Instead, we're going to figure out a way to express so that you can find your healing, and find your purpose and just find your balance, And so yeah, I started doing this thing, Poetry and Cupcake, because I was like, well, I have a niece who's like a little sister to me because we're kind of close. We're not super close in age, but we're close enough. And she's like a little protege, like she was my everything. So I took interest in her age group because when all the trauma started, I was in that age group. And I said, I just want to be a voice. I want to be a big sister. I want to be an auntie to all these young women whose mothers may be at work, and don't really have the time to sit with them. And fathers are at work and grandparents are, occupied. I would love to be that community voice, just to say, I see you. And if you can't go to anyone else, you can come to me. So Poetry and Cupcakes, it was just like this platform. It was a safe space. And we had cupcakes. We had cupcakes. So it went from the young folks coming to their siblings, their cousins, their aunties, uncles, their parents finding out about it, and then my peers finding out about it. And before long, it was a community event. It was an effort. Like, just everyone was coming out, and we would eat and we would talk and we would share and we would heal and we would listen. We would actually hear each other. And I said, this is very therapeutic. But in 2014, I produced my first theatrical performance. It was a choreo poem called Urban Rose's Soliloquies. And it consists of all of my written material. But I had some of my closest friends who participated in it, and they chose the poems that they wanted to, speak because they had relevance to what they had gone through, or maybe we made like little fine edits to make sure that they felt it was authentic in their delivery. And the audience compared it to for colored girls who consider suicide when the rainbow isn't enough. I think I said that correctly. I think I just said the title correctly. And so, yeah, again, it was just the overwhelming response, like people saying, thank you, we needed to hear this. I have been living with this. This is taboo. This is a subject that's been off the table for so long, but we're trying to live with this ghost, and it's time to retire it. It's time to let it go and focus on the healing process. And because you were bold enough to speak about this, because you were vulnerable before an audience and you did it with so much compassion, we applaud you, but we want to see you continue. And I was completely, from that moment, just inspired to just keep on doing this.
My goodness. What an amazing turnaround from suffering what you suffered, what no child could suffer. And then through your poetry, really providing a safe space for others to join in. And those people, it sounds like, became part of your healing, and you became part of their healing.
Yeah.
All through the spoken word, all through this gift of verse and poetry that you learned as a little child. Surely God planted this in your soul to become the person you are today. I want to end just by asking, for those young people who want to find their voice through the spoken word, what would your encouragement be to them?
The first part, your question, for young people who want to or have interest, or just an idea, they've taken interest in the spoken word, and they just want to get their feet wet, maybe give it a try. I would coach them 100%. Please, 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 because it builds character, it builds self-esteem, it definitely holds confidence. It's a great tool for you to learn yourself, to, you know, because it requires you actually taking moments out of your day, your busy schedule, to sit aside and to really think. You know, there's so much distraction going on. You know, it's easy to be like overstimulated, but to just really take away from the everyday distractions, to sit in a quiet corner. It's just as therapeutic as reading, you know, but this time you're writing your own story, you're putting your own words on paper. And then that right there is powerful. But when you actually stand to a mic or stand before an audience and you deliver, it's because it's so private, you know, and to reveal your inner makings, your ingredients. It's like you have this recipe and you're sharing it, you know, this great dish, and everyone's just, oh my God, what all did you put in it? And then you read this poem and they're just like, my God, wow, we had no idea. You're like, yeah, this is what's behind that great dish that you love, that I serve so often. These are the ingredients. So I would definitely encourage any young person that wants to try spoken word, because it takes you out of a comfort zone also. It's not just poetry, but you have to be very theatrical with it. You know, it's your cadence, it's how you stand, it's how you present yourself, you know, and there's punches. So there's certain words that stand out, action words, and you want to make sure you put emphasis on things because you're really trying to stress your point. And then, you know, for those who just think it's cool, maybe, you know, and maybe they don't want to pursue it as a career, but they just want to give it a try, I would encourage them to find like just a safe space where they can go and there's no judgment. So I have this space, you know, and this is not even a selfless plug, but I actually have a place in downtown Oakland. It's called the Lovely Nest. And so that's the thing. I'm trying to create a space that is safe for young people or just survivors or fighters, for just community to come on out and just exercise your voice, you know, and you can speak on your faith, or you can speak on your experiences, or you can just speak on, you know, your imagination, you know, paint your pictures with your words, and, you know, express yourself through your movements, let it flow, let it be a rhythm, you know, show us what you have. So anyway, I would just definitely encourage young people, give it a try. You don't have to do it as a career, but it definitely boosts confidence. It's something about the power of voice. So, yeah.
That's so amazing. Well, Nicia, thank you so much again for offering your gift of spoken word, but
Thank you.
also your story, which is so inspiring, because I think what I'm getting out of it is that your voice helped you in many ways overcome so many of those tragic things you experienced as a child, but not only for you to overcome it, but to touch and inspire others to overcome it as well. And so obviously God is using your gift to touch and heal other people. What satisfaction you must get from knowing that.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Knights, for joining us. We look forward to hearing more of your poetry this whole month. Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. God bless.